Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you A Nun in the Closet by Dorothy Gilman. This is copyright 1975 by Doubleday. And you can see here it says, by the author of the Mrs. Pollifax novels. You probably have heard of that series. Very well received and much beloved, including by me. When I review a Mrs. Pollifax book, I'll tell you about how I got into her. But for now, I want to review one of Dorothy Gilman's standalones. And so a little bit of my personal background with Dorothy Gilman is that my first reading of her, my first encounter with her, was on a standalone called The Tightrope Walker. And I got that from the Mystery Guild back in the day, and had no idea that Mrs. Dorothy Gilman was behind this whole Mrs. Pollifax phenomenon. But I really enjoyed that book back in the day, and the town I grew up in had a pretty good library. And so I just went to the library and read all the Dorothy Gilman books I could get my hands on. She wrote a couple books about a clairvoyant countess, and a couple of standalones, and A Nun in the Closet is one of the standalones. And I come to learn that it was the winner of a Catholic Book Award. So quite an awarded book. But my town library, this was the only book by Dorothy Gilman that they didn't have. And, as my mind trips down its paths, it occurred to me that I had never read this book, and I decided to go looking for a copy of it. And because I'd always wanted to read it, because it was Dorothy Gilman. And damn, they were rare and expensive. I was kind of shocked, for a book that didn't win an Edgar, that the prices would be so high. So I said, maybe at some point. But then a very wonderful friend of mine who I was telling about this, my frustration not being able to get my hands on the book that I wanted, got it for me as a gift. So for that reason, I can bring A Nun in the Closet to you today. So it's, one other thing though, I just check out the cover. The cover was created, the art was created by someone who paid attention to every page of this book. Not always necessary to have a great jacket, but you could tell the artist was quite tickled by the book and wanted to do justice to it, and did a really, really nice job of it. Except that he kind of made the two lead nuns look like twins. They're quite different people, of course. So the story is, it's kind of what you would expect. An order of nuns, the Order of St. Tabitha. They are based in Pennsylvania, a rather small cloistered order. They are unexpectedly left this mansion, this huge piece of property in New York State, and they have to figure out what to do with it. None of the nuns are particularly worldly because they're cloistered. So when they take votes to figure out who's going to go up to New York and check the place out, Sister John wins, because Sister John is a force of nature. She is one of those nuns, and if you grew up Catholic, you know what I'm talking about, who she knows what she wants. She knows who she is. She's not afraid to, get a little up in your face if she needs to, if she thinks you're standing in her way or the way of God. And she's a wonderful character, Sister John. You just love her. She's great. And, if she had ever become a series sleuth, I know I would have followed her, because she'll tickle you pink. She's great. Her counterpart, who goes up with her, is Sister Hyacinth, or Hyacinth, but I'm going to say Hyacinth. And she's not as well drawn. Sister John is really the main event. And Sister Hyacinth she's an herbalist. She knows how to make food out of the bark of wild trees and make gruel and healing herbs, which I think allowed Dorothy Gilman to get one of her own hobbies into the book, because as I understand it, she was an herbalist and quite knowledgeable about the many medicinal properties of herbs and fungi and all those other things that we suburbanites and urbanites know nothing about. And Sister Hyacinth is there mostly for as a foil, but again, Sister John is the main attraction. Well, they get to the house. They're surprised. It's quite a nice house on quite a lovely piece of property. The mafia is going to be involved when you find a big suitcase full of money, which is exactly what these sisters do. And in addition to finding a suitcase of money, they find an injured man on their property who is not doing very well, but they're a caring order. They bring him in. He's kind of a rough and tumble, like kind of snotty guy who's always cracking wise. But he's sick, and Sister Hyacinth knows how to take care of him. They take him in. They realize he may not quite be on the up and up, but their mission is to help people, so they help this man. And it becomes increasingly clear that someone wants to get to this guy, who they name Sister Ursula, because they have to say that there's a third person in the house. And I mean, they even go so far as to make a habit with a wimple for Sister Ursula to wear. So there's this kind of big, gruff guy in a nun's outfit. And I have to say, nothing will make me laugh like a man in a nun's outfit. I don't know why. There was that movie years ago, Nuns on the Run. I couldn't stop laughing. I just found it so hilarious. And there's a little bit of, remember the old movie, I guess it is kind of old now, with Whoopi Goldberg, called Sister Act? There are certain similarities here, although A Nun in the Closet came first, in that the nuns come out of the cloister and they learn more about the world. And a lot of the humor in the book is them being completely unaware of what's going on in the secular world around them. And they have to be schooled by some kind of nice hippies who are kind of squatting on their property, but, like the sisters, and the sisters like them. So they have nice interactions, and there's, they're a group of nice young people who are, who care. They care about people. They care about the earth. They may be considered hippies, but they're, drawn in a very positive light. And what they do is they bring to the sisters' attention the plight of these itinerant families who kind of move across the country, following the crops to pick, and never really are able to establish roots. The kids can't go to school, so they don't really get educated. And Sister John is she's outraged that these people are treated so poorly. And she is going to do everything in her power to make life better for itinerant workers. And you can kind of get what I'm saying here is that there's a niceness to this book. There's a spirit and a heart there that makes it so pleasant to read. And the mafia types are really cartoonish. They have to kill a couple people because they're in the mafia, and of course that's what they do, right? But it's so sort of soft-pedaled. The real story is about these nuns entering the world and becoming almost more like politically and socially aware as a result of of their interactions and inheriting, being bequeathed this house. And there's an interesting story that they find out as to how the owner ended up leaving his house to their order. So you could tell I'm a fan of Dorothy Gilman. One of the things I really like and respect about her is I think it's hard to write light and do it well. There are plenty of writers out there who think that they're writing light and, aim for humor in their books, but it may seem rather heavy-handed or I'm surprised too in books that are marketed as cozies that they can be kind of nasty in a way sometimes, sarcastic and I don't know, have maybe a cruel sense of humor sometimes, or even have a lot of profanity. But that's not what's going on in here. The secular cast does curse. There's no question about that. But Dorothy Gilman is such a pleasant writer. She's got such a sort of delightful, pixie-like sense of humor, and her writing is just, the brushstrokes are just so light and pleasant and enjoyable to spend time with. So while I wouldn't say that the plot here is anything that's going to knock your socks off, I do think that if the way I've described the book appeals to you, I think you'll like it. If you can find it, I mean, mazel, good luck with that, right? Like I said, they're not easy to find. And it's kind of a shame because I think this is kind of an overlooked, forgotten Dorothy Gilman mystery. And I guess that's really all I've got to say. I have a couple of unread Mrs. Pollifaxes on my shelves, so I will take one of those out soon because I was reminded of how much I like Dorothy Gilman. So, A Nun in the Closet, here it is. Take a good look because you may never see it again in person. And I will have another good book or great book for you next time. It's already waiting in the wings. I just have to make the video about it. Okay, thank you and have a good night.